Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Visalia Unified School District Superintendent, Dr. Tamara Raveline, and today I'll be providing a question and answer session based on questions that were submitted to our district on Monday by parents, students, and community members using our Google online form. I appreciate those of you who took the time to provide comments and ask questions on the Google form. And today we'll answer the questions as time permits, addressing those first that were the most common and relate to the return of our students coming back to school and distance learning. Some of our students are thriving in this new distance learning environment, and we receive comments that they're having a good time enjoying it and having fun. Other comments indicate that some of our students are struggling. We want our students back in school as soon as we can do so in a safe manner. And we did receive comments that schools need to be reopened for children for better education, structure, and the development of social skills with their peers. There were also comments indicating that people were concerned about bringing back our students to schools because of the health risks. We're excited about the number of parents who are interested in training on the platforms we're using for distance learning. Our sessions that we advertised filled up very quickly, so we will be adding extra sessions and we'll be publicizing those soon, and you can look for those on our Visalia Adult School website. As I begin to address the questions, I'm going to first address our staggered approach to reopening of our schools, and I'll be sharing a bit of the board presentation that was provided last night during our school board meeting. We're using this staggered approach to ensure safety of our students and staff. We want our students back in school, but we need to make sure that we are not opening up in ways that we end up going back and forth and have to close schools due to COVID cases. So first I'm going to talk about the options for returning to school for our preschoolers in grade 6, through grade 6. There's strong feelings about returning our students to campus, and we have received comments that we should not allow fear to halt our efforts to return students to campus. And there is criticism based on the comments we received that we're more focused on serving our teachers than our students. There is also concern, which I share, about the emotional health of our students as a result of their isolation away from their teachers and peers because they're learning at home. On the opposite side of this discussion, there are those who believe that the district is crumbling to pressure from parents and the community to return students to school when it's not safe to do so in the pandemic. Some believe it is selfish for families to return students to school as we're risking the health of others. So as you can see, we have comments on both ends of the spectrum. As we phase in a gradual return to school, we will move slowly so that we have the opportunity to learn and make any adjustments necessary. We're using pilot sites during each phase of our reopening so that we can get staff feedback on what works and what does not work, and we can make modifications and adjustments. So as we go through, and I'm going to again just share a few of the slides that we used at the board meeting. As we go through our first steps to reopening school sites to the public, to our students, we're first starting with assessments, and those are in the areas of English learners and students with disabilities. So we're targeting those. We have many protocols in place to make sure that our students and staff are safe. And if any of you have visited an eye doctor, a dentist, regular doctor, since the pandemic has started, you'll recognize a lot of the protocols. We have a lot of the same things in place as far as health screenings, extra protection, sanitation, hygiene measures, face covering, social distancing, etc. We started our one-on-one assessments. Again, those are individualized assessments, one child to one staff member. We started those last week, and at the end of the week we debriefed so that we could gain information from our pilot sites on how those went. And then this week we started at our other sites. We also are starting next week our services, one-to-one. Those are individualized services such as speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, etc., that are mandated for students. And again, we're starting with our pilot sites. At the end of the week, we'll debrief, and then we will allow that to occur on our other sites. So those are our first sort of baby steps into returning students to the school site. Next, we are planning on our targeted cohorts. Earlier this month, we were provided with information from the California Department of Public Health on how we could bring cohorts of students with special needs back to school. So these special needs include groups such as foster and homeless youth, our students who are English learners, our students with special needs, and other identified populations. These are for all grade levels, so we're developing it again on how we would do that so we can have it done safely. The cohorts have to be groups of 16, and there's a lot of protocols to follow. There are questions from many parents about students with IEPs returning to school. And it's not that just because you have an IEP, your student will be going back to school. It's really based on the needs of that individualized student and the services and supports they need to be successful in school. We are again going to move very slowly because as we bring any students back to school for more than just an assessment or a service for a short period of time, as students are going to stay for longer periods of time, we have to change our custodial procedures, our food service procedures, transportation to and from school, etc. So there's a lot of impacts that occur when we bring these cohorts of students back to school. Again, we'll be picking up with our pilot sites, and we'll identify those pilot sites soon so we can start testing there. And then as we learn from bringing back our cohorts of students at the pilot sites, then we'll open it up. And again, the cohorts are at all grade levels. So sometimes they're described as learning hubs. It might be a group of students who wouldn't necessarily be in a classroom together, but they will have adult supervision and support, so they can continue learning through distance learning, but at the school site and receive the extra supports they need to be successful. We're also working and writing, finishing up with our elementary school waiver, and that is for preschool through grade 6. This is different than the cohorts in that the cohorts have to remain 16 individuals. The waiver allows us to have as many individuals as we can safely use social distancing in a classroom. Once again, we would be working with some pilot sites and bringing back a grade level. Most likely second grade is what we've talked about to start with, so that we can phase in slowly and make sure we do it properly and do a good job. Again, we do not want to have outbreaks and then have to regroup and close schools. We're currently meeting and seeking input from our labor partners on this. We met with our principals today to get ideas about how we could facilitate this and facilitate options for when students do return to school. Once the principals at the sites get teacher input and bring it back to us, then we'll be able to finalize our plan, which we will then share with the public, reshare with our labor partners, and bring to a school board meeting so that we can have it approved to submit to the county health department. It has to be approved by our local public health officials as well as the state California Department of Public Education. When our students return, we are going to need options because not every family is going to want to send their students back to school for in-person learning. And so we realized that through the comments and questions we received. For elementary school, again, we're still developing this, but in the works, we're going to have some options. Either the students will stay in the AB model and they'll come half day to school, and then the other half have at-home learning, or the parents may be choosing full-time distance learning. And in those options, depending on the number of students, the student may be served by teachers at their own school site, or there may be a mix of teachers from other school sites that need to serve some of our students. And this is because we really don't know yet how many parents at this time will choose to remain on in-person learning or choose the full-time distance learning model. We do know that most likely some of the thinking has changed since August when we surveyed our parents previously, and so we need to get a fresh update on that, and we're working on a survey to send out to our families. That will probably happen within the next couple weeks. So once we know that, then we'll be able to do more planning. Distance learning from home, and so we're continuing to work on that. There has been some questions about when we do go back to school, how are the students going to have, again, this is for elementary, PE and music. That would occur during the asynchronous time. That would still be through video instruction. There was a question that came to us for this forum about the PE and music teachers at elementary school sites. How would they perhaps travel and remain safe and not join cohorts? So that would continue through distance learning through the asynchronous time. There was also some questions about concurrent learning, which is something that we very briefly discussed about having a camera that the teacher could have in the classroom, or perhaps Zoom with some students and have some in person. That was a very quick discussion. The feedback we received would be that that would not be beneficial. We do have some visual and performing arts teachers who see this as a possibility, so there may be some exceptions to the rule, but in general, we're not examining concurrent learning, where teachers are teaching in person and on Zoom simultaneously. We also have independent study options available, so that would be the third option if students chose that. When middle and high school students return to school, and that's much farther down the track because our county has to move into the red zone for 14 days before we could consider that. We're getting better as a county. Our metrics are looking better, but we're still a ways off from moving from the purple into the red zone as defined by the state. So we also have teachers and administrators who are looking at ideas for secondary schedules. We are thinking that perhaps we're going to need a different schedule than the elementary school. We know that the elementary students, there's going to be greater opportunity for them to return to school sooner. But as we're looking at extended periods of time for middle school and high school students, there's feeling by many teachers that they need more time with their students to cover the materials. And so we have a group of teachers and some administrators who are a think tank, and they're brainstorming and looking at different ideas for the middle school and high school schedules. We've asked that they consider that when we go back to school in person, that schedule would work for that time as well. And if there was also a question like, if we could go back to school, late November, early December, would you do that, or would you wait until semester break? And most likely, if it's during the holiday season, we would wait and bring students back after the winter break. Again, we don't want to toggle back and forth. That's not the ideal. We also received numerous questions and comments regarding the amount of asynchronous work and homework that our students are receiving this year. And these concerns have been expressed by students and parents, not only through this forum, but through emails and phone calls. It seems that a lot of our students in middle and high school feel very stressed that they're receiving an abundance of work and that they haven't covered the material well enough in class to do that. So we have been working with the principals, who then work with the teachers to really think about which essential standards and course content needs to be covered. It is much more difficult to cover the same amount, the quantity of material when you're teaching through distance learning. We know it takes teachers longer to assess if the students are understanding the material. It's not like you can walk around the classroom as a teacher and look over students' shoulders and understand if they're doing okay, listen to their conversations. It's much more difficult to do that online. There are some requirements, though, that we have to follow, and the instructional minutes that the state defines that we're required to follow this year include both the synchronous, so when you're with your teachers and peers, and the asynchronous, when you're working more independently. And those are as follows. That's 180 instructional minutes for TK and K, 230 minutes a day for grades 1 through 3, and 240 minutes a day for grades 4 through 12. That's the minimum. And we know, again, that our teachers are trying to cover a lot of material, and it's difficult to cover the same amount. So we're working with them so they lighten the load for the students. At the same time, I know the teachers feel a lot of pressure to cover the material, especially in the high school areas, to get the students ready for college. So trying to find that balance is something that's new to everybody. It's probably going to take some time to work out, but I encourage you, if you have concerns, whether you're a student or a parent, caregiver, to please reach out to your teachers and have genuine conversations with them about the amount of work or the lack of time to complete the work from all of the classes. There was also questions regarding the differentiation for students and time to work in small groups. Every teacher handles that a little bit differently. Teachers could begin the class all together and video conferencing, and then they can send their students to breakout rooms to work in groups or individual breakout rooms so that they can pull groups and work with them during the class time. That's very easy to do on the Zoom video conferencing platform. They might also just have some students black out their screen do some independent work and then pull them back together later. All of that simulates what happens in a regular classroom during a traditional school year. So it's very normal for students to do some independent work or some group work while a teacher is working with another group or another student. So that can be simulated on video conferencing. Our teachers also have Wednesdays to work with individuals in small groups who are in need of extra support or differentiation. And many of our teachers, I notice especially our secondary teachers, set up extra office hours. Not all teachers do that. We don't mandate that, but many of them have, so that our students can avail themselves and get extra support when they need it. There was also a question regarding learning loss and the plan to catch students up from last spring. And teachers, I want you all to know, the teachers recognize that many of the materials that would have been covered in April and May were not when we shut down last year due to the pandemic. So our teachers are working on the essential elements, and many of them are backtracking and catching the students up and working on the programs or the materials that they would have missed in the springtime so that they can be successful this year. We also have in the K-8 arena the iReady program and other assessments to demonstrate progress in learning the essential standards and course content. That helps give the teacher a gauge of how much regression may have taken place, or how the student is progressing this year in English language arts and math. There was a concern voiced on the question form that iReady may have a liberal bias, and so I want you to know a teacher committee chose this program based on the availability of English language arts and mathematics lessons that were appropriate and standards-based for K-8, and also the availability of the assessments in that program. So the program was presented at a public board meeting, and public comments were available for input before the board made the decision to purchase that, and which is the case for all of the platforms that we purchased. They were all brought to a public board meeting, and public comment was allowed. There was also a question wondering if the district mandates the amount of time students are involved in synchronous learning, again, online with the teacher and students, versus the asynchronous. And we don't have a mandate. It really differs for each student, each grade level and subject area. They all have different needs and requirements. So the mandated minutes of instructions that I alluded to a little while ago include both synchronous and asynchronous learning time. It is up to the teacher to decide which students need extra support and intervention. So if they ask them to come during office hours or meet with them in groups on Wednesdays, that sort of thing, and they have that available to them. Students need to follow the Zoom directions as assigned by their teacher. There were some questions about how long does my child need to stay on Zoom. The teacher will dictate that and give the directions to the student. And elementary students are required to attend the elementary PE and music and other individual and small group appointments on Zoom. There may be cases where a student is double booked, has speech therapy or something else, and can't attend music or PE at the elementary level, and that's okay. If you have another service, then your teacher will understand that and help navigate that. For elementary students, again, many of our teachers have their students on Zoom the whole time, but while they're working independently, they'll put them in individual breakout rooms so they can easily call them back, or they may just have them close their video and audio and come back when they're invited to do so. And again, that allows the teacher time to work with independent students or with small groups. Administrators have all the links to the classrooms and monitor instruction by visiting synchronous learning on Zoom, and then also have the access to check all the asynchronous learning in PowerSchool and the grades in PowerSchool and the assignments in our learning management system. So that is all available, and our administrators are monitoring that. I see them hopping in and out of classes sometimes. We've also received some questions about the number of places a student may need to go online to access homework and do classwork, because there's numerous platforms that a teacher may be using, or if they have multiple teachers, a student may find that different teachers use different platforms. We hope to move away from that, and we understand the frustration that parents and caregivers and students feel when schools or families have to learn multiple platforms. It's very difficult. Prior to this school year, we didn't have single district platforms. Every school and sometimes every teacher used different types of applications. So for this year, we have selected Schoology as our district-wide learning management system, and the goal is to migrate all the assignments there to the Schoology platform. But as with anything new, all of us are human. Some of us move at a faster rate, feel more comfortable at different rates, and so we have to give our teachers time to feel comfortable and move into that environment. So we are providing ongoing training and support, but it's going to take some time. Some people have fully transitioned, and some might take most of the school year to transition, and that's okay. Using Schoology as our learning management system, it's kind of like a shell to house everything. That does not prohibit our teachers from using other applications. In fact, some of the applications can be housed in Schoology. There's also some frustration, again, amongst many families because teachers use different software platforms. We have selected some very basic platforms, and again, we're migrating towards all of those. We do want to provide uniform applications, but we know that teachers will always supplement with other materials, but we're trying to get the basic instructional programs district-wide, and that is why some schools are phasing out certain programs as well, because we've moved to iReady for English Language Arts and Math for K-8, and so some of the programs that they may have used in the past, they may not be using at this time. I'm going to be now asking Mr. Brandon Gridiron, our Administrator of Equity and Student Services, to answer some questions. I've asked him to join me today. So Brandon, we have a few questions for you today. Can you first of all share how we're supporting students' social and emotional stability during this time?
Definitely. So since our return to school, a critical focus of ours has been on the social emotional wellness of students. Understanding with everything that's going on, that would be a major part of our students' success in schools. And so as a district, we focused on what we call our 3 R's, which is relationships, routines, and resilience. And our school teams are currently in supporting and helping our teachers understand how to support our kids with making connections, establishing consistent routines, and focusing on the resilience within the classroom. And in addition to that, we're also working with our parents and our families on those strategies. As far as our school teams, they're critically looking at data diligently right now to identify kids who have maybe significant needs in specific areas, to develop individualized or group interventions to support our students. As far as our teachers and administrative teams, we've gone through that training on those aspects of relationships, routines, and resilience. And we also put out what we call a SEL competency of the month, and that's focused on self-awareness. We have other support staff like our behavior intervention technicians, our school psychologists, social workers who also provide supports, both individualized or group supports to students, to parents, to teachers, specifically targeted at students who we identify who have specific needs in different areas. As a district, we've looked at incorporating, and this is feedback from our students and from our community, what we call our student wellness circles. So we just started that series of meetings with students, which actually started fourth through sixth grade yesterday. We have our second wellness circle that is today for 7th through 12th grade, and our next wellness circle is tomorrow for our 9th through 12th graders. And so really looking at making sure that we're creating spaces for us to be able to hear and dialogue with our kids about needs that they have and provide strategies and supports to help them along the way. And then a couple weeks ago, we had our training for parents on what we call the 3 R's. And so we provided the resources and strategies of how they can support their children in the home. And then throughout this month, it's our suicide prevention month. And so we have different campaigns and different supports that really provide strategies for students and families to help our kids cope with different things that they may be dealing with during this time as they're transitioning back into school. And then the last thing I would say is that we are providing technical assistance and supports to our staff. And so really helping them with understanding how to do this in a distance learning format.
Brandon, can you tell me a little bit more about the wellness circles, like what that entails? And if I have a child and I think, oh, they need to get involved in this, how do I go about making that happen?
For sure. So on our district website, if you go to the VUSD website, there is a page under departments or the Equity and Student Services Department, and you can access those types of resources or the registration link. We also sent that information out to parents. If for any reason a parent needs information on how to register their kid to participate in that wellness circle, you can reach out directly to your school site and they can get you in contact with how to register. And we can also send that information out directly to you in regards to having students register to participate. But all students are welcome, and we actually encourage and want as many students as we can to participate. We'll continue to offer more throughout the years, and so this is something that we'll offer regularly and then continue to communicate out to the community.
Thank you, that's fabulous. Do we still have the VUSD CARES line operating?
Yes, and I forgot to mention that. Thank you for bringing that up. So our care line is actually operating Monday through Friday, and I believe it's operating from 8 to 4, and the number is 559-931-8510. And so for the care line, it's supported by our school social workers or psychologists, and it's really an opportunity for parents to call in. Students can call in, staff can call in if there's additional support needed, if they're struggling and toggling through things and need really someone to be able to listen and provide support through that time, that is available for them. And so that information and that contact information is also available on our website.
Well, thank you. Some of our parents have indicated that their children are very stressed out. Some of them are stressed out because they're on Zoom and they don't really like the video conferencing format. Some of them, it makes them anxious. Some of them cannot keep up with their schoolwork, and that's at all different grade levels sometimes. If I'm a parent or a caregiver and I find that my child's stressed and maybe even having crying, anxiety, fear, that kind of thing, having fits if they're younger, what can I do to support my child?
Definitely. It sounds like you're talking about my home, actually. My own children are struggling with the same thing, and I think the important part of how we are looking at that is really taking time to talk openly with your children about the concerns that they have, and we're really trying to do our best to normalize this situation, as difficult as it may be, consistently staying with routines that would have normally happened, getting your children up early, feeding them breakfast, engaging in dialogue with them, checking in on their day at the end of the day. There are resources that are available on our website as well. And so, as I mentioned, if you go to our district website, there's a multitude of resources in the areas of different routines and strategies that help parents understand how to navigate through those, but then also really establishing those structured routines. If you can put a schedule together, that may help alleviate the stress, really normalizing again the day so that kids know what they're expected to do throughout the day, and there are examples of schedules on our website, and building resilience and coping strategies. Each morning having your kid maybe watch a mindset video or some type of coping video that they can watch and do some mindfulness activities, deep breathing activities that are available on our website as well, and then practicing some stress relieving mindfulness meditation activities that the students can engage in. We also offer these types of services or supports on our website in different tiers. And so as you see kids who have different levels of needs, those resources are available. And then the last thing I would say is really reaching out to your school site, the teacher, the school site administration. If a student is struggling academically with the content, to work with your school teacher to help them navigate through that. Our teachers are doing a great job in supporting our kids. And then also working with our school site administration to help our kids get connected to the necessary resources on our school sites. We have psychologists, counselors, social workers, sometimes behavior intervention technicians that are there to support. And then really looking at how do there are opportunities to reach out for a request for assistance. And so recently we made something live to all parents on their Parent Power School portal, which is called a request for assistance. And so parents can go directly onto the Parent Power School portal. On the left-hand side, they will see something called a request for assistance, and they can submit that directly from their home, and that information will go directly to the school site administration, and they will reach out to connect and provide resources.
Well, thank you. Brandon, we also received some questions from parents like that they felt that their teacher maybe doesn't understand the home situation, how many children are in the home, and that it's not a big home, and so I've got 3 or 4 kids trying to learn all at the table, all at the same time. And sometimes parents express that perhaps a younger sibling isn't as quiet as maybe the teacher who's working with the student would like, or another child walks behind the screen because they're all trying to, huddle around the kitchen table kind of thing. So one of the questions, and again, there were several of these, but the sort of overriding question is, how can I communicate with my child's teacher and help them understand our home situation? And how do I handle it when I feel like my child's teacher isn't being fair because they're judging and admonishing the child based on something they have really no control over? So I'm a parent. How do I do that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, we definitely are empathetic and understanding to the circumstances of each of our children's home lives. We have to be. I think it's critically important for all of us to put on that lens of empathy and really understanding what may be going on in the home. And so what I would suggest to parents is, as those challenges present themselves or things come up, to definitely reach out to the student's teacher and have a conversation with some of the circumstances that are being described and working through that process. And if that is still continuing to be an issue, to reach out to the school site administration. The school site administration can work closely with the parent and the teacher and the student to make sure that the student is provided support, the teacher is provided support to ensure that the student is successful in school. And so we definitely want to be sensitive to the circumstances of our parents and our students in the home.
Thank you. And some other questions regarding mental health. One person asked, why don't our schools talk more about mental health issues such as DID, schizophrenia, et cetera? What is the appropriate age to sort of bring those topics up at school? And I know we do mental health screening. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Yeah,
so we actually start our mental health screening and support for students about 4th grade is really where we utilize and send out our assessments. 4th through 12th grade is where we look at that. But it's not too early to really talk to our kids about their needs. And strategically listening to their voice and making sure that we're supporting them. Our wellness circles is really about that, is helping our sites build capacity to be able to engage in this conversation with their students on their campuses. And so although our district is providing services and supports to these wellness circles, our whole intention is to build the capacity of our site teams to be able to engage in this conversation. So we do have school psychologists and counselors at our school sites that can continue to keep these conversations going and supporting our students through their challenges as they face them. And so making sure that we meet the needs of all our kids is our top priority. And as these needs arise, we want to definitely continue to address them.
Thank you. It's great that we're starting those wellness circles again and to have those needs brought forth so we can support our students and families. Another question is surrounding support of students and wanting to know why we at middle school and elementary school, there isn't a lot of talk about LGBTQ plus history, struggles with people who are in those categories or questioning, and how do we support them to feel more accepted? How do we support them if they want to use a pronoun different than their biological identity? So there were some questions surrounding that kind of support.
Definitely, and I think with that, it's really similar to how we would support any other child. We want to support all of our students, and we want to make sure that all of our students' voices are heard, all of their varied perspectives and needs are met, and we want to continue to engage in conversations about things that are important to our students. And so specifically in this area, we have to continue to train and support our staff on their cultural awareness and cultural sensitivity to topics and situations that are important to our kids, and making sure that they're not feeling devalued or marginalized in any type of way. And so we are going to continue to provide training and support through cultural proficiency of our secondary sites starting this year, and continuing to phase out that training throughout the years, and engaging in conversation with our site administration and providing training and support in these areas to support all of our students.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Gridiron, for your being here today and providing this information for us. I'm sure as we hold more of these question and answer kind of sessions that we'll have more topics to ask you to return. Thank you. And now I've also asked Susie Skaden, who's our Director of Health Services, to join us today. We do have some questions regarding health issues. So Susie, some of the questions surrounded flu season. We're fast approaching the flu season, And there may be employees who show flu symptoms, like fever, body ache, and such. And how are we going to know if it's flu or if it's COVID-19? How are we going to handle that?
Okay, it'll be very hard to tell the difference between the two. Both flu and COVID are respiratory illnesses, but they're caused by different viruses. COVID obviously is the new coronavirus, and then the flu would be the influenza A or B viruses. The symptoms that they share could be, like you said, fever, cough, shortness of breath, fatigue, sore throat, congestion, fatigue. It's all stuff that you see with the flu. Additionally, COVID may have loss of sense of smell or taste. The only way that you really could differentiate is if your healthcare provider were to do a test for influenza or a test for COVID, or both, so that they could tell you the difference. Both of the diseases are passed to others, but it appears that the flu has a more rapid onset, and COVID takes a little bit longer to spread. Flu symptoms maybe 1 or 2 days. COVID's probably going to be 5 to 14 days. But people can have the germs and not know it. They may not have symptoms for a day or two, so then they could spread that to other people unknowingly. People with COVID probably are contagious a little bit longer than they are with flu, and so we want to monitor that. And individuals that have severe complications, you can have it with either flu or COVID. So you would want to seek medical advice if you have severe symptoms occurring. Both of them go from person to person contact, and so our established preventative measures that we have here in Visalia Unified will help prevent either one, the flu and COVID. Such things like maintaining social distancing, wearing a mask, staying home when you're sick, and avoiding sick people.
So the self-screening and the screening and questions we ask staff and students when they arrive at school, really we're screening for both simultaneously, because we don't want students or staff at work or at school, whether it's the flu or it's the COVID-19.
Right. The intent is not to have ill people together.
Okay. So the protocols are pretty much the same as far as what we'd be doing. And it sounds like in some way, because we're doing all these extra precautionary measures, that we're going to prevent the spread of flu as well as the COVID-19. Is that right?
That would be really nice. And if that occurs, that would be our mission accomplished.
That would be great. There's another comment regarding flu season, and just wondering if it's better to keep the students in distance learning, and concerns about what we used to call toggling. I haven't heard that term in a while, but we start school and 2 months down the road we're shut down because we don't meet the metrics, and then isn't it more difficult for the child to go back and forth?
With the procedures that Visalia Unified has in place, the guidelines, the 6 feet social distancing, good hand hygiene, screening when they come to school, those will help prevent these things from occurring. But should it happen that we do have to shut down, our nurses in Visalia Unified are trained to be contact tracers, and we will work with the health department to determine next steps. It may be that we need to close down just one classroom. It may be that we have to close down just one grade level, perhaps a school, and it would be up to us to communicate to the health department what is happening in the district and work with them to see how many schools should be closed down. Typically, what the state has told us is that it would be a 14-day closure, and they would assess how, what's happening, the area would be cleaned, and then we would move forward from there.
So really, we're going to be following the direction of the county health department.
Yes.
Is there anything else we should think about as far as flu season approaching simultaneously while we are dealing with COVID?
Actually, yes. We are going to have flu clinics here. We're going to have a flu drive-through clinics for the community and our students at the end of October. We'll be advertising the date and time for that, but it's free, and drive through and get a flu shot, and that would at least prevent perhaps one of the illnesses.
Okay, well, thank you. And I'm sure as things develop and we learn more about this pandemic, and hopefully vaccines are developed and available, that we'll need to have you back to answer some questions as well. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
The next line of questioning really had to do with on-campus sports and activities resuming, so I'm going to forward to that. We are starting with athletic conditioning on October 1st. Some of our high schools may choose to wait until the following Monday on October 5th. We are starting again conditioning. That is not athletic practice, so there won't be people tackling each other for football or spiking and such setting for volleyball. We're just doing conditioning, knowing that there's a possibility that athletic competition in volleyball, water polo, cross country, and football could start in January. And of course, we don't want to have competition start in January and our students out of shape, because that's dangerous, more chance of injury. So for high school only, we're starting athletic conditioning, and that is outside exercise and running. There's no equipment to be used. It can't be shared. If there's any small pieces of equipment that are used, they have to be disinfected by an adult. All of our staff are trained to do the disinfectant and handle the chemicals so that they're clean between each. It's much like bringing back our targeted groups of students to school. There's cohorts that have to be stable, so the coach can't float from group to group, one coach, 15 students, or two coaches, 14 students, etc. Visitors aren't allowed, and again, this is for conditioning. At this time, it's outdoors only, so that means no pools, no weight rooms, no gyms. Those are all closed. There was questions about other activities, and we are starting those, but they're virtual at this time. Our high school performing arts instructors have done a great job. They're developing virtual performances and competitions for the year. Other clubs and groups may be doing the same. And we'll be layering activities in person as we learn more and have more safety protocols that allow us to do so. Again, it's imperative that we start with the high school athletics because CIF has set a tentative January schedule for certain sports to begin. There were some questions about Science Olympiad and other activities, and because they can be held virtually, of course, our district supports that. We want as many connections and regular activities and things to occur as possible. So we're working with our school sites to make sure we can have that happen to the extent that it's available. We've also received some questions about high school senior activities and graduation. This is a very difficult time to be a high school senior, as was for our students last year. Perhaps it's even more difficult for our seniors this year because they haven't been able to start the year together. So we have many school sites that are hosting virtual activities, and I would encourage all the parents and students at our high schools and middle schools and elementary schools as well to look at the website for your school and the social media pages, especially at the high school. Social media is big for advertising events through ASB. To look at those so that your student can join in on those. I encourage you to take advantage of those opportunities. The social and emotional connections are really important, especially at this time in their life. At this time, though this could change, it doesn't appear we're going to be able to have large gatherings this year, like prom or traditional graduations in a stadium. I hope that changes, and if it does, we would like to go back to those traditions. But it is possible that high school graduation looks similar to what it did last year. So it's an individual graduation, ceremonies at each school site and such. If we get closer, in the springtime and we see that that's probably the way it's going to go, then like last year, we will form committees and work with our high school principals and ASB directors and such, and students and parents, and get their input as to how we can improve that. Our graduation ceremonies were really beautiful last year, and I think there's some wonderful traditions there that even when we do go back to traditional graduations in a stadium, there's elements of those individual graduations that could be carried over, but we are always looking to improve and make it more special. We also received a question regarding after-school programs and students wanting more information about after-school care once school resumes in person. So I'm going to invite Dr. Marie Pinto, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Pro Youth, to either come join me at a future session or provide information so that I can share it with you. Visalia Unified doesn't operate those programs. We're a partner of Pro Youth, but we don't have direct control over that. They have a separate board, a chief executive officer and such. So I want to make sure we get you the most up-to-date information and get that directly from the program. For future sessions, as we move to slowly reopen our schools with this staggered approach, it's going to be necessary to provide more updates than we have in the past. So with these more frequent updates, we'll probably start a series of this type of event every Wednesday, so that will allow you to submit questions, and we'll maybe have some topical days where we push out certain types of information to keep everybody abreast of the changes that are going on. Again, we want to move very slowly in reopening our school sites because we want to be careful and make sure that our staff and our students and parents who are dropping students off are safe, and that we're doing everything we can to protect everybody's health in our community. If you feel like you don't have enough information, please go to our website. All of our community alerts that we've put out since March are posted there. All of our informational videos are there, and the distance learning and parent and family resources can be found there. That's at the very top of the page, and that has an abundance of resources for families. We also have a different social and emotional section. I think Mr. Gridiron alluded to much of that. So all of those areas, we update them frequently. There's new materials in there all the time, so that's a great place to go look for resources. And if you're more inclined to social media, we have our district Facebook page and an Instagram feed, so you can also use those if you choose to do so. Always call us. You know, we get lots of emails and call on our general web page. There's a submission place for questions, or call any of us when you need assistance. We're here for you. We are again in the final stages of drafting our in-person and full-time distance learning programs, which would be available when all of our students are allowed to return to in-person learning. That's again when we move into the red zone as far as the state stratification process, and we have to be in that zone for 14 days before we can consider returning, coming back to school. We will be providing information to parents and families in the weeks to come after we finalize our plans. Again, we're working with school sites and getting feedback this week and next week. So we'll finalize our plans and get a survey out to our parents. We'll probably start with just elementary, because those are the students who would be coming back first, because we'll need to know if you're interested in full-time distance learning or if you're interested in in-person learning. And that will help us know if we need to adjust our staffing. It may mean that some children do not stay with the same teacher that they have right now if there's great swings in those numbers, because we have to accommodate the family's wishes. We're also working to upgrade our sound system in the boardroom here. We had a couple board meetings, one in particular. The sound system seemed to be struggling a bit, so we're working on that. We did have questions on why we were not going directly onto YouTube during the sessions, and that is because it doesn't facilitate us to have simultaneous translation into Spanish, and so we're not using YouTube for the live broadcast during board meetings because of that. We are planning on returning to in-person public comments at board meetings fairly soon. And to accommodate this and to keep everybody safe, we would have a reservation system, and one person at a time would be in the building, speak at the podium, which would be covered, and we'd use all our safety protocols, and then exit the building at another door so that we could have a flow of individuals, one at a time, come into the boardroom and make public comment. So we're working on that. As a reminder, when we start that, like always at our board meetings, public comment is limited to 3 minutes per individual and 20 minutes per topic. So that concludes our question and answer session for today. Again, we're going to do this next week, and we'll do it in subsequent weeks, depending on the number of questions we get. We may have topical conversations instead of just a Q&A that's general and broad-based, but we'll continue to update you this way, as well as through our community alerts and on our social media pages, and if you're a parent, through our Blackboard system. So thank you, and have a good day.